Department of Administration Commissioner Spencer Cronk joins me now to talk about this restoration project here at the Capitol. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Commissioner, let's begin with this plan. The overall plan for the Capitol project is $240 million. $109 million was recently allocated in the bonding bill. So how far can that get you?
Well, in 2012, there was that plan that was approved unanimously by the Capitol Preservation Commission, and it recommended funding for the restoration project in 3 phases. That first phase was in 2011, where about $40 million was allocated. In 2012, $109 million, and so we'll be going back to the legislature next year with another $120 million ask.
During those final hours of the legislative session, it was unclear whether or not any money would be allocated whatsoever. Were you watching a bit nervously? It seemed to be the big drama of the end of session.
I certainly was watching. I mean, this was a project that if it didn't get funding this year, we would have to mothball the construction that has been going on so far. And so a lot of the scaffolding that you see up would have to be taken down. We'd have to renegotiate contracts. It would have added millions of dollars onto the renovation project itself.
And so were you taking any kind of an active role then to try to get this passed?
We wanted to make sure every legislator knew on both sides of the aisle how important this project was. And for the most part, everyone agreed that this is something that we need to do. We had strong leadership from the governor and from this commission that I talked about earlier about how if we don't act now, we're just going to keep compiling the costs onto this project.
So this is a grand plan. Can you try to explain to the general public what is going on? Because obviously it's very visual, as you were talking about the scaffolding.
Yeah. This is our opportunity to really preserve the Capitol for the next 100 years. We have this beautiful building, a state treasure in our Minnesota State Capitol, but we unfortunately have neglected it. And there have been studies on my desk for the last 20 years about the need for this renovation project. Our plumbing is antiquated, our mechanical system, our electrical system, the facade itself, chunks are falling off, and there were some life safety issues that needed to be addressed. So we had to do this once and for all in a comprehensive restoration project. We've seen other state capitals across the country that have done it in a more piecemeal approach over the years, but that just means the scaffolding is on there on the building for 10, 20 years with funding allocated in a very piecemeal process. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing it comprehensively once and for all and preserving the building for the next 100 years.
And so how do you expect this project to impact the function of the legislature, the staff, and even the public and their ability to come in and tour?
This is our opportunity to really do this right. Part of the restoration project that isn't well known at this point is the additional funding for a new office building that will be located across University Avenue. That will likely hold most of the state senators. This will allow both the majority and minority senators to be located in the same building and hopefully work better together. They'll have to share elevators and see each other on a more regular basis. It will also provide the opportunity for us to build a large capacity hearing room to service about 200 to 300 public members. And so, as you saw this session, both with the same-sex marriage debate and with gun control debates, there was a need for those large-scale hearing rooms, and this will allow us to do that. In the Capitol itself, we will have more accessible restrooms, we'll have more restrooms overall, and we'll have additional classrooms and coat rooms for the public to make sure that they have a pleasant experience when they visit the Capitol.
And how does is the work expected to go on of the legislature and of staff during this entire process?
Yeah. The tenants of the building have been very clear that we want to make sure that to the extent possible, we keep the chambers open throughout the restoration process. So although some of the offices will be moved to other parts of the Capitol complex, we'll keep the chambers open for session. So you might, if you're a public member, you might have to go visit your legislator in a different space nearby, a block or two away, but we'll be clear about the communications on how you would have to get to your legislator. But they will be located nearby, but the chambers will remain open.
Okay, Commissioner, I do need to get your opinion on a recent article in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. It was on April 1st, and it stated that the Minnesota Department of Human Rights says that the construction company working on the current phase of this restoration project, J.E. Dunn, failed the good faith efforts standard to diversify its workforce. Now, it goes on to state that J.E. Dunn missed its goal for employing minority and female male workers by nearly 50%. Does this concern you as the man who heads up the agency that oversees this?
It certainly does, and that was a contract that was negotiated prior to my tenure as the commissioner of that department. So we've been working with JE-DUN very aggressively to make sure that they're meeting their targeted group goals. We want to make sure that the workers that are part of this restoration effort are reflective of our state's diversity, and that we are doing everything that we can to ensure that.
Now I want to ask you another question. This might be tough to answer,
Sure.
but with technology constantly changing, how challenging is it not only to restore a building like this, but the talk here is that they want to try to make this a functioning building for another 100 years to come. Can you do that, not knowing what changes there might be in technology in the future?
You can certainly be smarter about it. I mean, if you see in the basement of the Capitol right now, there are wires that aren't even useful anymore, but they hang just above my head on the ceiling of the basement, and some of them are functional, some of them aren't, but we've just been adding them throughout the years. And so what we hope to do through this renovation project is to make sure as we add new technology that it's replacing the old systems itself. So the work that we're doing is to create a technology system that will be able to adapt to future innovations.
The last question for you then is, what is the timeline? When can the public expect everything here to be done?
Well, major construction will be done in 2016 with some final touches done in 2017. So we'll likely have a grand opening in early 2017.
And that, of course, is with the expectation that funding is allocated again next session.
That's absolutely correct. Thank you. We need to make sure that we get the continued funding next year to make sure that this process happens on time and on budget.
And that's the last funding request then, next year?
That's the goal, correct.
Okay, Commissioner Spencer Cronk, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Julie.